Welcome to the lesson on the dynamics of interpersonal relationships. I'd like to start off by sharing a quote. Oh, the miraculous energy that flows between two people who care enough to get beyond the surfaces and games, who are willing to take risks of being totally open, of listening, of responding with the whole heart. How much can we do for each other? I really like this quote as a way to start off this lesson because I feel like there's so much depth to the quote. First, do we put up walls? Do we only show what's on our surface? Do we play games sometimes? I'm sure we've all been guilty of playing some kind of game in a relationship. Take a moment to think about maybe ways in which you have. Also, what kind of risks are you open to? Sometimes putting yourself out there, loving with your whole heart, causes for you to be extremely vulnerable. And as a result, sometimes there are consequences to that. Sometimes it's great joy and a wonderful relationship. And other times it's broken heart. But really think about what it means to be in a relationship, and ultimately, what does it mean to put your whole heart out there, and how much can you do for each other? A second quote I'd like to share is that we are not the same person this year as last, nor are those we love. It is a happy chance if we, changing, continue to love a changed person. I really like this quote as well when we start talking about interpersonal relationships and their maintenance and development and growth, because we really have to embrace change. For instance, the person you may have married 5 years ago is not necessarily the same person today. They've changed, they've grown, just like you have. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago. So how can we stay in a healthy, happy, harmonious relationship, embracing the change, accepting the change, growing with the change, supporting the changes you make or your partner makes, but really something to think about. How does change impact a relationship? Let's now discuss the two different types of relationships. We have relationships of circumstance and we have relationships of choice. Relationships of circumstance are the ones we can't choose. So these often would be examples of family, co-working relationships, classmate relationships, these sorts. The reason being is that, for instance, with family, you can't pick and choose your family members. And so therefore, blood relationships or blood ties are relationships out of situation or out of the circumstance. Just like when you took this class, right? You didn't have a lot of choice in the matter. What you did have choice in the matter was what time the class was or what day of the week the class was. Maybe you chose the instructor on purpose. That would be me. However, most of the time it's out of convenience. Therefore, it's out of circumstance. You had to take the class. This was the day or time available because it worked with your school and work schedule, etc. On a funny note, my parents always told me the story of how my sister reacted when I was born. So my father had taken my sister to the hospital to meet me for the very first time. And all of the little babies, myself included, were in their bassinets in the nursery at the hospital. And my sister came in and got excited when she saw all the babies. And then she started doing eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And she wanted to choose her baby sister that way. And unfortunately, when she ended her little game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, it didn't land on me. It landed on the baby in the bassinet next to me. And she was crying and crying when my father had to explain to her. Imagine she's only 3 years old at the time. But when my father had to explain to her that, no, you don't get to choose your little baby sister. Like, this is your baby sister. This is Christina. This is the one we're going home with. So she cried the whole way home. I would hope that today she would feel differently because we are good friends, and that she would choose to want to have me as her sister. Which brings me to the second type of relationship, and this would be relationships of choice. So think about in your life who you choose to be in relationships. Most people choose their own friends. Most people choose a romantic partner, although I would like to say that sometimes due to culture or due to religion, we are in arranged relationships, arranged marriages, for instance, and therefore that relationship is more out of circumstance, the earlier type we were talking about, as opposed to it being a relationship of choice. Sometimes we choose a friend and we feel like we're so close to them that we call them our family. So we call them our aunt, or we call them our cousin, even though they're not blood related, but that's how close we perceive the relationship. So those are the two different types, circumstance and choice. Moving on, I'd like to discuss why we form relationships. Here's our list, starting off with appearance and attraction. Often we form relationships due to how somebody looks. Right? Usually one of the most important characteristics in the earlier stages of relationships, especially in American culture. We know that with attraction and appearance, often over time, it's not what's as important, as there's a wealth of other characteristics of the person that we grow to learn about and love, of course. But appearance could be a determining factor in the early stages of relational development. Similarities is also a reason why we form relationships. And with similarities, we're really searching for common ground with similar interests, beliefs, hobbies, values, etc. You see, similarity serves a social validation. And what that means is that we're not alone in our thinking. So it's nice to meet someone and get to know someone who is like-minded or who shares something in common. Makes us feel like we're socially validated. Similarity also serves a self-fulfilling prophecy, which goes, you are like me and I like you, so therefore I like myself in return too. So if you find some quality in me that you really like and I really like you, then it's going to make me like myself more. So interesting how those self-fulfilling prophecies can work. Next on our list would be complementary or differences that one would have. This is also known as opposites attract. Differences can really strengthen a relationship. And sometimes couples, for instance, are really attracted to each other's strengths and or weaknesses because it's the opposite of what they have. So try to think, now that we've gone over a few examples, which relationships in your life formed based on appearance, based on some similarities that you may have shared, or even based on some complementary differences. Another characteristic of why we form relationships has to do with proximity. And relationships form because people spend time together. So think about how much time you spend with your coworkers or even with classmates, people who you go to school with. Maybe in certain living arrangements, like a roommate situation, or getting to know a new friend. In all of these examples, we can see how the more you spend time with someone, the more proximity in the relationship, the more it could lead to liking. However, keep in mind that once the proximity changes, so once the distance changes, the relationship could have challenges, or therefore the liking may stop because we're no longer in each other's lives or we're no longer seeing each other. Research suggests that we're likely to develop feelings, sometimes even strong feelings, either positive or negative, towards others that we encounter frequently. That would be because we're in close proximity. Competency is next on our list. And being competent at something means that you have the ability. You're good at it. So research suggests that we like to be around people who are competent. They have skills, they have strengths, they're talented, or they're intelligent people. We're attracted to someone who has those characteristics or qualities and abilities because it's something to admire. It's something to look up to. It's some positive trait that we find attractive in others. Next on our list would be rewards. We form relationships because we find the relationship rewarding. There's a theory called the social exchange theory. And really, there are rewards in a relationship, and then there are costs in a relationship, meaning the disadvantages in a relationship. And then there's the outcome. What's the end result? So rewards could be things that are positive that come from a relationship. Any desirable outcome. So if you think about a romantic relationship, love, a companion, perhaps friendship. Sometimes it has to do with monetary qualities. So for instance, double the salary, double the finances could be seen as a reward in a relationship. Intimacy in the relationship, time spent together, a partner to lean on. So as you can see, there are a lot of different rewards that could be in the relationship. You could also look at it from a cost perspective or a disadvantage perspective. So any of those rewards could also be seen as costs. For instance, now lack of intimacy in the relationship, unsuccessful communication, quality time not being spent together. Your partner loses their job, which now impacts the financial climate of the relationship. So anything lack thereof could be seen as problematic and costly. The way that the theory works is that typically if we feel that there are more rewards in the relationship, more reasons to want to form the relationship, we go for it. If we find that there's too many costs or too many disadvantages, we may choose otherwise. And last but not least would be self-disclosure and trust. Of course, both important ingredients for a healthy, happy relationship. We have already talked about self-disclosure in our course thus far, and you can see how trust is truly the foundation. Once we establish that trust, we are able to move forward and continue to grow the relationship. So as you can see, there are many reasons why people may form a relationship with another. Most of my examples had to do with romantic relationships, but of course we can take any one of these characteristics or qualities and examine how a friendship could also be formed, or sometimes even co-working relationships could be formed. So these are different qualities that would work for a variety of different relationship contexts. Thank you for learning more about the types and reasons why relationships form today.